Good morning. Apologies for the little halo above my head. A little bit of light. I hope you can hear me. Stuart was unable to do the video for Sunday, so I'm doing it instead, just to reflect some of the thoughts that Stuart shared with us on Sunday morning. Really encourage you to go and check out the video online. The recording online. It is connected to the church website. Sylvia's testimony is also there, which was very, very powerful, also on Sunday morning. Stuart was sharing with us from Daniel chapter 3, which is the story of Daniel's three friends, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, being thrown into the fiery furnace. Nebuchadnezzar has taken seriously the words of Daniel and the vision that he had of this image of different types of metal, from gold right down to iron. But instead he's built this statue on the plain just outside Babylon, and it's all of gold, solid gold. Whether it's of himself, we don't really know. And then he commands all his administrators and leaders to bow down to this golden image. And when they hear all the different types of music, and you'll read it in the passage, and as they hear this, they all bow down, with the exception of these three young men, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego. And they refuse to bow down. Nebuchadnezzar gives them another chance, and he says, listen, he says, if you hear it, nothing can get you rescue from my hand. You need to hear and you need to bow down. And I'm going to read the verses. I'm sure you'll read them in your groups as well. But this is how they respond. And they actually say to Daniel in Daniel chapter 3, and it says this in verse 16, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it, and he will deliver us or rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you've set up. Bold words coming out of incredible conviction of truth, and the issue of the second commandment, not bowing down to idols in their heart. There is one God that they serve. Well, Nebuchadnezzar, of course, is furious. He has them thrown in. He has the furnace heated 7 times hotter, and even the soldiers who throw those men in are killed. And then Nebuchadnezzar stands up and he shouts, and he sees in the furnace, he says, I see not just the 3 men, but a 4th man, and they're walking around unharmed. And he calls them out. He sees that 4th one as the son of the gods. Daniel's 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, come out, and Nebuchadnezzar gives honour to the God of Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, because they trusted in him and defied the king's command. And so the God of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego is set up as one whom they should serve, or should certainly not be in any way said anything against, as it says in those verses. Now, what did we learn from Stuart? Well, Stuart moved over it very, very quickly. There was a couple of things that struck me, though, from what Stuart actually said, and maybe some of you that were there picked up on this. First of all, he said, when we're going through a furnace, whatever it may be in our lives, there are 2 things that we need to remember. Whatever we're going through, whatever difficulty, whatever struggle in work, at home, or in our own personal lives, he said, first of all, there is an extra someone in the furnace with us. That's important to remember. There is an extra someone in the furnace with us. And then secondly, what binds us comes off when we come out of the furnace. Because the one thing that they went into the furnace with, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, were the ropes that tied them. They were bound. But when they came out of the furnace, those ropes were gone. It's the one thing that was burnt off. They didn't even smell of fire. But what bound them was no longer there when they came out of the furnace. So those 2 things we learned. And then Stuart got us to look at Romans chapter 12. And he talked about how Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego did not conform. They would not give up their convictions. And that was a point that he encouraged us to think about. How do we live in a world with convictions, deep convictions, what it means to follow Jesus? Live in a world that really finds our convictions at times uncomfortable, or doesn't agree with our convictions. So what are our convictions? Now, as we go to study this passage, as we go to look at these different things, keep that in mind. What are our convictions? It's a question we're going to ask ourselves. What is it that we'll hold firmly to and we will not let go? So I really encourage you to listen to Stuart's message. Listen again and hear again, those of you that were there. And if you haven't, just to catch up with this series on Daniel. Have a great time in your study.